Good morning, everyone. Brian Early here in North Central Indiana, bringing another agronomy update. Normally, I do more than one subject, but I intend to make this one as brief as possible and just talk about one subject, and that is the corn disease outlook. So at Corteva, we have a disease model where we couple our hybrid model, and a disease model that we've been working on for a long time. And every week, every Monday, we get these maps from one of our lead research scientists in Des Moines, and it shows the risk for gray leaf spot, northern corn leaf blight, tar spot, and southern rust. So I'm going to show you a couple maps just to start off for a whole country view. So starting with gray leaf spot, gray is usually our first disease to show up in the field. Conditions outside of this week really haven't been great for gray leaf spot development, so it's a disease that likes warm and wet. And we've been really cool other than this week. So on the map, there was a lot of dark green for a very low incidence or very low risk of it. And a lot of the dots have flipped to a little lighter green color. So the risk is increasing like that. And then you look at the tar spot map. So out of all the four diseases I mentioned, this is the one that's going to drive decisions in northern Indiana. Last week or 2 weeks ago, the delta started lighting up with a lighter color, so it was lighter green, and now I'm starting to see a lot of yellow. But as you look up in the southern Illinois, southern Indiana, even the dots in northern Indiana have changed from a very low risk to a low. So you're starting to see that progression where the conditions are starting to line up a little better. So still nothing to be concerned about as of this point. There have been a couple fines in Indiana, so many of you probably saw the Purdue fine, which is not abnormal. They usually fine tar spot in plots at Penny up in Valparaiso every time this year. So it's on susceptible hybrids in an environment that creates the perfect environment for it. So I'm going to lay out something here, just kind of go through my thoughts and what I think on the outlook for tar spot and the risk associated with it. So I picked a field in northern Indiana, and I wanted to look across years, looking just at precipitation. So when I finish this video and wrap up the summary, I'll explain what I'm looking for. So basically, I want to look for a stair-step pattern. So as I go through these years, starting with 2020, what I'm going to look for, I'm going to look at the blue line, which would be 2025, and the orange line, which would be the year I'm looking at. So for instance, here on the screen, this is 2020. So what I want to look at is look for a stair step pattern that looks just like a flight of stairs. So starting off here, comparing this year to 2020. 2020 was an average year for tar spot. It wasn't a 2018 or a 2021 where it was heavy. So right away, I see some differences. So got some rain early in 2020, then it would dry off. And then we had a pretty long stretch right through here where it was in 2020, where it was a prolonged dry period. So definitely doesn't look like the blue line for 2025 so far. 2022, which would be represented again by that orange line, similar pattern, little steps up on 2022, and then you see a period right here where it dried out for a little bit, stepped up again, and then a long period of dryness. So far that line doesn't line up really good with 2025 either. I'll click over to 2023 here. A lot of you can probably remember 2023, a dry spring, which is indicated right here in the map, so or right here in the graph. So really a prolonged period of dryness. Tar spot was around. It was late in the season, didn't do a lot of damage, and we didn't have that cycles of wet and dry. So it took a while to get wet. We kind of did see a stair step pattern then, and then it dried out the tail end of the season. So we did have tar spot in 2023. It was definitely yield limiting, but not as heavy as some of our outbreak years. 2024, last year, definitely prolonged periods of dryness. So I see several of them in there on the orange line for 2024 where it dried out and was long periods of dry. Most of us can remember that. And then you had the hurricane rains that came through and gave us a lot of rain where we really ramped up. Now, we did have tar spot across the entire area in 2024. This particular field's from Fulton County. It had late tar spot as you got further south in the area that I represent, down towards the Kokomo Lafayette area. We did have heavy tar spot in that area, and those lines would look a lot more like they did in 2025, which would line up with what we see here in the blue. So a lot of you probably noticed I did skip over a year, and that was 2021. So this was the year that I was really wanting to compare. So in 2021, you see that classic stair step pattern. So it rains, gets dry, rains, gets dry, rains, gets dry, and so on. As you can see in 2021, that pattern persisted pretty much the entire year. So, looking at 2025, what I want to see is that same pattern. And lo and behold, look what we have. We've got rains, gets dry, rains, gets dry, rains, gets dry. So, this pattern looks like for a lot of the area that risk, if this pattern tends to continue or does continue, this will put us at greater risk. So I really like to look at this early part of the season because I think this is probably the most important part. We need this wet, dry pattern to happen early because those tar spot infections, those microscopic inspection or infections that you can't see, get in the leaves, and then they have that latency period or that time it takes to come from that microscopic inspection to when you can actually see with the eye, and that could be as long as a month. So. This kind of weather that we're having in 2025 looks like the type of weather to get it kicked off early, and if this wet, dry, rainy period tends to continue, that could put us at higher risk. So to wrap that all up, as I mentioned several times in the video, tar spot likes the wet, dry cycle. We've seen both opposites of that. So cycles of really wet, like we would have had last year, and that was definitely counterproductive for tar spot. It where we had the hurricane rains following the Tippecanoe River, we did not see tar spot develop simply because it was too wet, too long. So you didn't have those dry stretches to go. And on the converse, on the early side in 23 and 24, we had it dry for a long time and not a lot of rains, and that also was not conducive for tar spot development. So 25 right now to this point in the calendar year or the crop year is setting up to have that stair step pattern of wet dry. So I think our conditions are a little more favorable to have something blossom up early. So all that to wrap it up, I would say be planning, and there's no need to overreact. So I don't see anything that points to an outbreak yet, but be watching the weather, and I definitely would be putting out updates. But if this pattern continues where we go dry and then rainy and then dry again, that could definitely set us up for an outbreak year. So just my thoughts on it, something to be watching and something to be planning for. So if you run into any questions, feel free to reach out anytime. Thank you.